So
Yes.
so I'm getting some funny texts. So Laura says that she read my book and she's a lazy lion. That's hilarious, Laura. I love it.
Yes, Laura is one of our VIP,
Oh,
members.
there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome. All right. Well, it
she,
looks like we've got 50 people. Do you want to, you think we should crank it up?
yeah,
Yes.
yep. Let's get started, and Patty can continue letting them in over the next, well, the rest of the hour actually. So,
Amazing.
so you guys want? Let's see. Let me look at the chat really quick, and we'll decide if we should go. All right, let's start it with this. So, in the Facebook group, I had a question that was, what is the secret to fat loss? Right? What is the secret to fat loss? And, first of all, is there a secret? And here's the secret, guys. The secret to fat loss is not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is, and it's not what the marketing world of fitness and nutrition makes it, because so many people are wanting to get you to do different things and try different supplements and do different programs and all this stuff. And it's actually really simple. So, the way that I look at it is your nutrition needs to be simple, because you should do nutrition multiple times per day. So if you're trying to do something complicated, if you're trying to do things like, like the paleo diet has almond flour and all these different types of things, it has you running halfway across town to get some special product. So how sustainable can you do that? Yeah, of course, there's some people who just crush that for month after month, year after year. But the reality is for most people, that just doesn't make sense. So, right. So the strategy, the secret is what is doable for you, so that you can do day in and day out and get the type of metabolic function that you need to be losing fat, right? To be losing fat. And that's really it. So the first secret to fat loss is doable. The second is you need to really burn the fat or starve the fat and feed your muscle. That's the goal, right? Your goal isn't just to lose weight. You don't want to lose muscle. You want to lose fat. So how do you do that? And how do you make nutrition simple? This is the way you make nutrition simple. It's been proven over and over in research after research after research. The thing that always shows up basically is high protein, given that you don't have any types of pathologies that are going to be causing a problem for you. High protein is an extraordinary idea. It's going to feed your muscle, and it's going to feed all your enzymes, and basically everything in your body runs on protein and protein structures. So high protein is where you start. Then produce, which means vegetables and fruit, and it means whole sources. It doesn't mean canned juice and like processed stuff. It means straight, pure vegetables and fruit. So protein, high protein, vegetables and fruits, the size of your fist, 4 servings a day, and stay very well hydrated. How do you know if you're very well hydrated? Your urine is very light yellow. Your urine is very light yellow or towards clear. So that's it. No, there's no other complications other than that. And the more complicated you get, the more difficult. Yes, Dr. Breus.
I've got an addition. So I 100% agree with all the things that Robbie has said, and I think they're all incredibly important. But part of the reason that he's got me here is because there is a very large component of sleep that has a major effect on what's going on from a dietary perspective, from an energy perspective, but also from a weight loss perspective. So many of you may not know this, but my second book was called The Sleep Doctor's Diet: Lose Weight Through Better Sleep. And it really talks about this relationship. And so I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. Robbie's giving me some latitude here. He's going to let me talk a little bit. So I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to break down how we know the effects of sleep deprivation are on the metabolic system and why it's so important to follow good sleep guidelines. So it turns out that when you become sleep deprived, lots of different things happen. Before I get to that, I'm going to double tap on sleep deprivation because it turns out that's individual. So as an example, I go to bed around midnight and I wake up at 6:15 every day. I'm the sleep doctor and I only sleep 6 hours and 15 minutes a day. So remember, 8 hours is a myth, okay? Get the amount of sleep that you personally need. You'll know what that is. If you can't figure it out, we can give you a sleep calculator. There's one on my website that can help teach you how to do that. But as an example, if my wife slept the same time that I did, she would be sleep deprived because she normally goes to bed at 11 and wakes up at 7, and she gets about 8 hours. So your sleep deprivation is an individual number, and only you will know if you're sleep deprived or not. Okay, now that you kind of have a feel for what is sleep deprivation, let's talk about what does it do to your body. Interestingly, it does 4 very specific things. So when you become sleep deprived, meaning you're staying up too long, your body doesn't like that. And so one of the things that it does is it worries what's happening. And so it elevates cortisol. When it elevates cortisol to keep you awake, it's actually increasing your appetite. Why on earth would it increase your appetite? It increases your appetite to forage for food because it says to itself, I don't know why I'm awake, but I better have some energy stores. So now I'm going to kick in that appetite mode. So as soon as you get sleep deprived, your appetite increases. Second thing that happens, your metabolism decreases. Once again, the exact same reason. Your brain says, I'm awake right now. I'm not sure why, but I want to conserve the resources that I've got in my belly. So it slows your metabolism down. So just from that one thing, we have high appetite and low metabolism. That is not good, but there's more. The next thing we look at are the hormones that are affected. There are 2 hormones in particular that I want people to know about. One of them is called leptin. The other is called ghrelin. What we find is that with ghrelin, that's, by the way, if you want to look it up, it's GHRELIN, and that's what I call the GO hormone. This is the hormone that actually elevates by almost 20% when you're sleep deprived, and it increases hunger. Hunger and appetite turn out to be 2 different things in your brain. What leptin does is we see a decrease in leptin by about 15%. Why is that important, Michael? Because leptin is the hormone of satiety, or making you feel full. So in summary, and I'm still not done, we have high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, which increase your appetite. We have high levels of ghrelin, which increase your hunger. We have low levels of leptin, which is you don't feel full. And we have metabolism slowing down. This is not a good recipe to be walking into trying to lose weight, but wait, it gets even worse. So the more sleep deprived you are, this cortisol is running around your brain. Here's what happens. Your brain says, I don't like this much cortisol being up here. It's too activating. And so it wants to quell or calm down that cortisol. The easiest way to do that is with serotonin. So your brain wants to emit serotonin. You know what the easiest way to emit serotonin is? Eat a Snickers, eat a muffin, right? Eat a high-fat, high-processed, high-sugar food, because it brings that level of pleasure. And that's why, by the way, we call them comfort foods, is because they make us feel comfortable, because they help exacerbate the process of serotonin. So it's terrible to be sleep deprived and trying to lose weight, because all the odds are stacked against you, right? And so one of the things that it's always important to kind of keep in mind is, if you can, while working on weight loss, is figure out about how much time you need to feel well rested, and then figure out a schedule of when you can get that rest. By the way, it needs to be super duper consistent. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then you'll start to see what's happening. Robbie, jump on in, brother.
All right, so one thing that's awesome, and then one thing for me to piggyback on this awesome knowledge, wisdom that you guys are gaining is this. So exactly what Dr. Breus just said, serotonin. Why is the Snickers bar working as serotonin? It's because the receptor sites for serotonin can actually be filled by glucose, right? So glucose, your body craves sugar because the same receptor site, those mailboxes that the message of serotonin goes into, it can also be filled almost kind of like a fake message from glucose going and triggering those serotonin messages. So your body feels that it's having a feedback loop of receiving that message of the feel good hormone serotonin. So, you lose sleep, but then if we look at the physical, and then you have all these issues that Dr. Breus has just shared with you, but then we have the other side of it also, that in daytime, right? If you're not getting enough sleep and then you're combating this, it's really a vicious cycle, because then what happens? You don't feel like exercising, you have low energy, and that becomes an issue. So, and why is that? Is because just the opposite things happen during daytime, when if you want to get sunlight, you want to have a strong diurnal or daytime physical activity, you want to burn calories, you want to have some metabolic fatigue and load and stress. You need to have those stresses on your body so that your body has a strong wake cycle, so that once you get to sleep, then you sleep easier, because you need a strong, right? Like everything else in life, it has ups and downs. So to get a strong sleep bump, you need to get a strong daytime bump. So if you're not exercising, you're going to also affect your sleep. If you go too far in exercise, which many do, then you get a sympathetic, or the part of your nervous system that you have fight or flight, right? You activate too much of the fight or flight portion of your nervous system. And then that's going to be what we call sympathetic overtone. And you're going to be going into a nighttime where you have higher heart rate and more stress and more cortisol and you're going to be having trouble shutting down. But if you get just the right amount of exercise, you have a strong daytime cycle, which then makes sleeping that much better. And you're processing all those nutrients, and you're having metabolic activity during the day, which then bumps your metabolism, right? So that is huge. So following what we talked about in the beginning with the nutrition, and then following what I'm sure Dr. Breus is going to share next, and how to optimize your sleep, and then having that strong physical activity pattern during the day. So really quick, before I turn it back over to Dr. Breus, how should you exercise, and how much exercise should you get? It's really simple, guys. It's really simple. 10% more than what you're used to. So if you're used to sitting on the couch and walking to the fridge, then walk to the fridge an extra 10%, or walk to the car, or start, and every week do 10% more. That's the difficult part, is every week I want you to do 10% more, and every 3 or 4 weeks back off a bit before you start going forward again. That's the way you get amazing results. So don't try to build Rome in a day. You don't need to go from a 1 to a 10. You need to go from a 1 to like a 1.5, and then to a 2, and therefore. And consistency is the key.
And that's what I'm going to double tap on. So, Robbie's talking about this diurnal schedule, which is incredibly important, but he just ended with the secret weapon, with the key to the entire thing, which is consistency. When it comes to sleep, believe it or not, it's not as important your going to bed time as your wake up time is. And there's a very specific biological reason why. When we wake up in the morning, if we wake up at the exact same time every morning, including the weekends, folks, you do not want to sleep in on the weekends. Here's the things that happen biologically. When the sun hits your eyeball, you have a special cell in your eye called a melanopsin cell. And this actually sends a signal to your brain to turn off the melatonin faucet in your head. This helps with brain fog. Being consistently waking up, let's say it's 6:30 every single morning, your brain then starts to know what to do, and it can anticipate when to slow down on the production of melatonin and turn that faucet off. There's a second thing that happens there as well. Once the faucet gets turned off, a special timer gets put on in your head, and that tells your brain when to actually begin producing melatonin again. So it turns it off and then sets the timer for when to turn it on. If you are consistent across every single day, guess what? You'll get tired at the same time, and you'll wake up at the same time. And as far as I'm concerned, I want you to do that obviously based on your chronotype. So we've had a lot of people who are making comments in here talking about, hey, I'm a wolf, I'm a dolphin, I'm a lion, I'm a bear. Those are chronotypes. So for folks who don't know about my chronotype system, you can actually identify what is your genetic predisposition for when you want to sleep, eat, exercise, all these wonderful things based on your genetics, which are your chronotype. So there's lots and lots of really good stuff that you can be doing. But if I had to pick just one thing, it would be consistency, and especially consistency in your wake up time.
I have a question in the chat.
Awesome. Let's hear it, Patricia.
So the question is, I am classified as a bear. And by the way, this is from Noel. I am a power napper, 20 minutes, and I get sleepy around 8:39 p.m. I don't like going to bed so early, and I will wake up at 4 a.m., which is too early. 5:30 a.m. would be okay, but I'm so sleepy by 9. I could go back to sleep when I awake at 4, but will sleep to 7. I need suggestions.
So this is an interesting scenario, and one that we can probably generalize to a lot of people. So A bear is somebody who has basically a 9 to 5 schedule. So these are people who have a tendency, not Noel, and we're going to get to the reasons why, have a tendency to like to go to bed around 10, 10:30. These make up about 55% of the population, and then get up around 7, 7:30. There's a lot of data looking at them and the reasons why it may work or may not work. The first question I always ask people, if they're finding themselves getting very tired earlier in the day, number one, medically speaking, have they been assessed to have a sleep disorder? You could have a mild case of sleep apnea. You could have a mild variant of narcolepsy or something that is changing the quality of the sleep that you are getting at night, which could be one of the things that makes you very, very tired during the daytime. That would be first question number one. The second thing I would want to know is your vitamins and minerals. If your body doesn't have all the vitamins and minerals in it, it doesn't function in the way, shape, and form that it probably should. So there are 4 different things that I actually ask my patients to go have tested by their doctors. I will look at melatonin production, magnesium, vitamin D, and iron. Those 4 things have a dramatic effect on the sleep cycle, and they can move people in their chronotype and make them tired earlier than they want to be and not be able to sleep and wake up too early as well. The third thing I can tell some people is maybe your chronotype isn't a bear. Remember, there's only 30 questions on the internet that I have to work with you on. And so sometimes we have to get a little bit more technical with people. And so Noel, if you'd like, we can maybe offline talk a little bit about that and make sure that we have you categorized appropriately, because you kind of feel a little bit more lionish to me than maybe bearish to me. But we'll have to see. So I would say those would be the areas that I would try to look at for people and, see what happens.
Patricia, do we have another question?
So far, no. Not in the chat. Anyways, we have a lot of questions in the Facebook.
Yeah, why don't you want to share one of those?
That's a very interesting topic that people are asking a lot in the group is the fusion with fitness and sleep, how one can improve the other.
Sure. I'll start with that, and then Robbie, you can jump in as well. So here's the thing that we know about sleep and fitness in general is people who are regular exercisers have a tendency to be regular sleepers. This has to do with energy expansion or expenditure, sorry. This also has to do with movement, right? So our bodies are meant to move, and they're meant to move every day. And we know that when we move every day, that actually helps with our sleep. Okay, Michael, help us understand a little bit more. Could it be that just people who are naturally drawn to exercise are also naturally good sleepers? One of the things we know is that physical exertion, and to be clear, it's not like you have to run a marathon, okay? We're talking about exactly what Robbie is saying here, 10% more than what you're currently doing. That actually begins helping with things like endorphins. And so when you get that endorphin increase, that actually can help other aspects of your body from a neurochemical standpoint know and understand what's going on. Here's the thing. If you're sitting on the couch, not expending any energy, your body doesn't need to sleep as much because you're not doing anything that's requiring that, right? And so being active really helps with being sleepy. And so that's really how our bodies were made in a lot of ways. Now, there is the opposite side of this coin, which is interesting. And Robbie alluded to it with people who over-exercise, right? Some people take this way too far. That is called overtraining. And when you talk about overtraining, one of the very early signs of overtraining is insomnia. And so you can absolutely do too much to make your sleep worse by hurting yourself. Injury, pain, soreness, delayed onset muscle soreness, things of that nature can certainly have a big effect on your sleep. But to be clear, the single best way to improve your sleep quality is to exercise, without question. The single best thing that you can do is have daily exercise. And again, it's not about running a marathon here. It's about 20 minutes of getting your heart rate up. I don't care if you walk the dog. I don't care if you take your car and you park it at the back end of the parking lot at the mall and you walk, and that counts. Something is what you want to do. Robbie?
Yeah, exactly. And we, with our VIP system, we actually figure out what your optimal physiological dosage is, which means, based on your physiology and your fitness level and how fit you've been over the last 18 months and how fit you were as a kid and all these really important factors, we actually figure out what is your optimal physiological dosage. How many minutes of exercise should you have in 3 different zones? On the light intensity zone, on the moderate intensity zone, and on your high intensity zone, which your high intensity zone is not going to be the same as someone else's, right? So, for one person, that might be 85% effort. In other words, you feel like you're expending 85% effort on a high intensity zone. Someone else might only be 65% for their high intensity zone because they're not ready for 85%. So one really good thing that I think many of you are going to like to hear is that the whole thing with high intensity training and HIIT training, with high intensity interval training, I actually, even though the research show, oh yeah, if you do it a short period of time and you go really high intensity, then you're going to get the result of a longer duration. Yeah, but do you want to do that? Do you really want to exercise like that? Do you enjoy fatiguing the heck out of yourself? Some people do, right? But the majority probably don't, right? Most of them aren't as weird as I am and actually enjoy that kind of thing, and right. And so I respect that fact. And so here's the great news: is you need to do exactly what Dr. Breus just said, and that is do something that is easy, and that's what we call your adaptation zone, which is only about 40% effort. It's only about 40% effort, and you should start with what you truly enjoy so that you want to do it again and again and again and again. A good plan followed all the time is way better than a perfect plan that's too hard to follow.
So Robbie, if that's the case, for example, there's a question here that says, I don't do any exercise. Where should I start? Would a good example of something like that be stretching or walking, something that's relatively low impact for people to start? Also, Valerie asked an interesting question where she says she's sitting a lot of time and she's got an under desk elliptical and things like that. Would a 5-minute, bounce program, stretch program, balance program that she could do in between clients, would that be suitable enough to meet some of those fitness requirements?
Yes, absolutely. That would really help. It just depends on where you're at, right? So if you're going from, what we call like couch potato to then using, an elliptical under the desk and this type of thing, that's huge. That's huge. You don't have to have some amazing plan. You don't have to go do CrossFit or anything like this whatsoever. But you are faced with one thing, and that is, as we age, our mechanics, our body mechanics start to go downhill. We start to get a little too tight and a little too weak in certain areas. And then physical activity kind of sometimes for a lot of us starts to suck because it starts to feel stiff and pain. And I don't want to do it because, it's not enjoyable. So here's the thing. Just like having a strong wake cycle by having some exercise will create a strong sleep cycle. Once you get into physical activity and once you're there, then how do you progress? So, the things that get you going in the beginning are not going to be the same things that get you to the next level. But if you never get going, you're never going to get to the next level. So everything we've just talked about over the last several minutes is getting you going. But how do you get to the next level? And how do you get to the next level is you have to analyze and look at your body mechanics and figure out what is stiff and what is too tight and what is causing you mechanical issues and what is too weak, so that you can optimize your body mechanics so that all physical activity becomes more enjoyable, so you don't have to deal with arthritis and joint pain and all the other things kind of falling apart as you get older. There's a way to overcome that. So yes, do what you love, but then have a unique, individualized body approach to realign and make your body feel 20 years younger. And that is complicated. And that is what we start on November 13th, is teaching you from toe to head, right? Not head to toe, because that's not way body mechanics work. It actually starts from your feet. So we're going to teach you from your feet all the way to your head, how to think about all those things. That's what's starting November 13th, is we're going to give you all of that for free. So yeah,
and so first of all, I don't know if we actually said this, but Robbie is actually my trainer. Like, I work with the fitness doctor, and I got injured, and so we're working on my injury, but we work together. And so I follow these programs. These are really good, tried and true, very helpful programs. One other thing I wanted to add in addition to that is what I needed to start when I was exercising and then I stopped for a while, I actually needed an accountability partner. So I needed somebody who kind of gave me the nudge, right? And said, hey, Michael, make sure that you're doing this, make sure that you're going here, doing this. And sometimes they would do it with me. So one of the things that people out there could do is if you have a friend, a colleague, or a family member that you think could be helpful with it, tell them about the challenge. Maybe get them to enroll with you, and then you guys can do it as a partnership together. And then you've got somebody right there as your teammate. Now, to be fair, Robbie's a pretty motivational guy. And all of the staff at the Fitness Doctor are incredible. Keith, Patricia, I mean, all of them are amazing. So they're super hyper motivational people, but sometimes it's also nice to have somebody that you're bringing along into it as well. And I think there's still time to sign up. Is that correct, Robbie?
There sure is. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. CJ had a question, Patricia. Is it okay if I answer that one?
Yeah, and I also actually would love you to give us some tips on deep sleep. One VIP client, Laura, asked that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to answer CJ first, and then we'll go back to deep sleep. But here's one hint. Exercise helps with deep sleep. There's a lot of data to support that, and you're going to be getting great exercise very soon. So you should be getting some great deep sleep. So CJ said, I'm so tired that I fall asleep instantly, but if I wake up after 3 to 4 cycles, I find it almost impossible to get back to sleep. Any tips for getting back to sleep? So here's what's interesting. When you talk about sleep, and this is going to be more on the philosophy side, there's 2 main things that I ask people to do. They need to have discipline and they need to have acceptance. So what do I mean by that? Discipline makes a lot of sense, right? Go to bed at this time, wake up at that time, follow these specific rules. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm the sleep doctor, and sometimes I don't sleep so well, okay? Robbie's in fantastic shape, and sometimes he doesn't work out so well or sleep so well. Like, we're all human. So number one, CJ, dude, cut yourself some slack, okay? Like, it's okay if you can't fall back to sleep. The world isn't going to come to an end. Your career isn't going to go into the toilet. Like, I promise you, your life is going to be okay. So number one, kind of lower that bar a little bit for yourself. Also, number 2, trust your body. If your body wakes up and your body doesn't want to go back to sleep, there's probably a reason for that. That might be okay. Let's say that you've only gotten, for example, if you got 4 sleep cycles, the average sleep cycle is 90 minutes, that's 6 hours of sleep. If you were me, you'd be almost done, right? So sometimes you can actually get up earlier if that's something that you need. Let's say that the wake up is at 3 o'clock in the morning and you haven't gotten enough sleep, and you do need to consider being able to get back to sleep. So there's a couple of tips I want to give people. So number 1, if you wake up in the middle of the night, don't go to the bathroom. What are you talking about, Michael? There's a caveat here. Many people, when they wake up in the middle of the night, they don't actually have to go to the bathroom, but they say, I'm up, I might as well go pee, right? That is not a good idea, because you go from a recumbent position to a seated position to a standing position, and you start walking. That increases your heart rate, that increases your sympathetic nervous system, which makes it tough to go back to sleep. To be clear, if you gotta pee, go pee, all right? Like, I'm not saying that was kind of a joke, okay? But if you really don't have to go to the bathroom, you're actually much better off lying in bed and relaxing. There's now data on something called non-sleep deep rest, okay? There's very interesting studies that are coming out about this, where if you lie in bed in a quiet position with your eyes closed and just relaxed, it is actually rejuvenative. We think that it is worth an hour of lying in bed like that is worth about 20 minutes of sleep, believe it or not. So interestingly, if you woke up at 3 and you never fell back asleep, but you laid there quietly until, let's say, 5 or 6, you'd actually end up getting about an hour's worth of rejuvenation from that. The third thing I want to tell people is, most people wake up and they do the worst thing that you could possibly do. They look at the clock. Now, I tell people all the time, don't have a clock near your bed, turn the clock around, but you know what? People can't help themselves. Then they instantly do the mental math and they say, oh crap, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to get up at 6, sleep. And they try to force themselves to sleep. You know, I tell people all the time that sleep is a lot like love. The less you look for it, the more it shows up, right? So when you're out there trying to find that super person for you, you never find them. But the second you stop looking, that person comes into your life. The same holds true with sleep. And so now that you've got some more information, you know a little bit more about rhythms, you know a little bit more about non-sleep deep rest, here's what I would recommend that you do. If you're going to look at the clock, which I know you will, whether I want you to or not, here's what I want you to say. Instead of saying, oh shit, I want you to say, this is awesome. Why do I want you to say that? Because now you have an opportunity. You can say to yourself, look, I was hanging out with Robbie and Dr. Breus, and I learned that if I'm lying there resting, it's almost as good as sleep. So I don't have to worry about that part. I'm going to just kick back here and relax. What ends up happening is it lowers your heart rate. Many people don't know this, but the most important statistic in sleep is you need a heart rate of 60 or below to enter into a state of unconsciousness. When you stop being anxious about the fact that you're not sleeping, your heart rate adjusts and the natural sleep process can take over. So it's actually very simple. It's just really about chilling out and not worrying about it. And again, let's say that you never fell back asleep. It almost doesn't matter because you're still getting some level of rejuvenation anyway. Make sense?
That's that's a perfect segue into Laura's question. And I think the first thing we should ask Laura is, are you actually having, because she first of all, Laura's a gazelle. Okay. She's like, she's a person that I wouldn't go running with because I don't want to be embarrassed. Right.
I hear you, brother.
How old are you, Laura?
I'm 60.
60. Yeah, she's 60.
And she's
I'm
crushing
42.
it. I love it.
I'm 42 and I would not want to go running with her because I don't want to be embarrassed. So that tells you a little about her fitness level, especially aerobically. Okay. So
Right.
then, so Laura, do you actually have an issue with deep sleep, or you're just wanting to try to optimize it, or where are you at with that?
I think I do have an issue with deep sleep.
So Laura, may I ask you a few questions if that's okay?
Last night I got 14 minutes of deep sleep and I was in bed. I was asleep for 9 hours and I was in bed for 10 and a half hours. And I only got 14 minutes of deep sleep. So I'm giving myself plenty of opportunity and I'm not getting much. So yes, go ahead, ask questions.
So number one, you're in bed too much and too long, no question about it. And so when we consolidate our sleep schedule, all of the aspects of that schedule increase in development. So number one, can I ask you, do you use a sleep tracking device, and which one to help you understand how much deep sleep you have?
I just started using an Oura Ring about a month ago.
Okay, good. So so Oura is, so first of all, full disclosure, I am Oura's chief sleep officer. So I work with Oura. I know and understand how they're doing things. And they actually just put out a new product yesterday, an updated version of their software for their ring, which looks pretty amazing, by the way. When you're doing sleep tracking, there's a couple of things that I want people to think about. Number one is accuracy. So no sleep tracker is perfect. I want to be very clear about that. Oura and Fitbit turn out to be the closest in terms of accuracy. There was actually a head-to-head study that was done with multiple trackers, and Oura and Fitbit came out on top for sleep. Not for activity. I don't read that data. I was only interested in the activity side, the sleep side of it rather. So for sleep, either the Fitbit or the Oura are probably the top two. When you look at sleep staging information, here's the thing to remember is you will have variable amounts of deep sleep. So if you look back in your cycle, are there any times that you did get deep sleep that was either in the green or that you felt was the appropriate amount of deep sleep?
Yeah. Yes.
Got it. So if there were times where that happened, then we're in good shape. So first of all, if you turned to me and you said, Michael, I always get less than 15 minutes of deep sleep, I've never gotten into the green, then I would want to look at the sizing on your ring, because the contact points might not be picking up what it would need to be picking up, because what it's looking for is pulse, blood pressure, and core body temperature, because we know in each one of the stages, those can be very different. And so that's how algorithmically we identify those. Now, I'm glad to hear that you're interested in deep sleep. May I ask you about your training schedule in terms of, as it sounds like you're quite a runner. Are you an everyday runner, and do you do long distance? Do you do ultras, marathons? Like what's your bag?
I'm a distance runner, and
Mhm.
right now I started Robbie's program in August.
Mhm.
So we do the bio-op training like 4 days a week. So when I first started, I was only running on the off days. So like really for me, like I've only been running like a little over 7 miles in a week, which is what I used to sometimes run in a day. So lately I've started increasing that. But yeah, so my mileage isn't like, I'm not overtraining.
That was where I was going. That was what I was trying to figure out next. So it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like you're overtraining. So that's good. A
Yeah.
lot of people do. So that's kind of why I was walking down that path.
Yeah,
So
I
if you're
get
not overtraining and the last question is, are you going to bed within your chronotype? And have you been able to identify your chronotype yet?
Well, I said I was a lazy lion because when
that's right. Lazy lion.
but you know, I don't, because like when I read your book, it's like a lion gets up and throws on the running shoes and heads out the door.
Right.
And that's what I know. That's not what I'm supposed to do, but that's what I like to do.
Right.
And now I'm not. Usually, I'm using bio-op. If I run on a bio-op day, I'm using that as a warm up. So I'm not running first thing. And but the hours you just talked about for Noel could be more like a bear. But one of the things that talks about a bear that doesn't resonate with me at all is I've never had weight issues, and I don't like to. I mean, I've been the same weight since high school, so that didn't resonate. But all the other stuff about the lion totally resonated. But I'm not waking up at the crack of dawn.
Got it. So I love your comment that you're a lazy lion. I think that's pretty fascinating to me. So give me an idea on roughly what time are you going to bed and what time are you getting up on average?
On average, 10 and 7:30.
Got it. Okay, so the first thing that I would look at for you is I would actually have you stay up later. I would ask you to stay up maybe to 11 and see what that did to your sleep schedule. Also, the other thing to recognize is you're actually looking more for, so what I do with Oura Ring with my patients is we run mini experiments. So each week we try to change one aspect and then see how it affects their sleep. So then we start to know what's going on. So just like science normally would be a lot of A/B testing, right? So the first thing I would do with you is I would shrink your total amount of sleep time by about an hour. So I'd say instead of going to bed at 10, I would look at going to bed at 11. That will actually give you a little bit more sleep pressure, which should actually help push you a little bit later, which I think would be the first step that I would take. You're still waking up and you're saying,
can I adjust it on the other end? Because I have never done well staying up late, like if ever, even in college. And so if I push past a certain point, then I just like can't even fall asleep. And right now I fall asleep very easily.
Got it.
That feels like a bad test.
Okay. So then what's the get up time then?
Well, right now it's 7:30, but you know, if I have to set an alarm to wake up earlier, that would be easier for me than pushing myself to stay up till 11.
Okay, so then let's give that a shot. So then what I would say is get up an hour earlier, monitor your ring for a week and see if there's a difference. If there's not, let's get back in touch and we'll figure it out.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
You bet.
And Laura, we'll also have in the new year or close to it, we'll also have Dr. Breus coming to visit our VIP mastermind. So questions and stuff like this, people who want to go deeper, we'll have elite experts like Dr. Breus and others in respective categories. So yeah, so it's not the last time you guys will get to connect.
Okay, I can let them know how it works. All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, my pleasure.
So let's touch on the last topic of the day, which is hormones. So we have some questions about menopause. Let me find the question again.
So Patricia, hold on one second. There's a question that was asked that I think is really interesting because a lot of people don't realize the way that melatonin works and they think it works differently than it actually does. So Dr. Breus, the question is, could you please talk about melatonin, how effective, and this is from CJ, how effective is it and is it useful? What type should you look for and how much should you use?
Absolutely. And this actually can fall nicely into the hormone question as well, Patricia. So let's talk about melatonin first, and then we'll talk about hormones. So melatonin, so number one, I'm going to give you a little bit of a spiel on melatonin. So 95% of people out there have plenty of melatonin on board. One of the first things that I do is I ask people if they've gotten their melatonin tested. So you need to figure out if you have a deficiency in melatonin, because you don't want to just be adding melatonin if your body is already producing it. Now, one question that people often ask is, Michael, if I take supplemental melatonin for a long period of time, will my body stop making it? The answer is no, that will not happen. Melatonin is actually made in two places. There's pineal melatonin and there's gut melatonin. Those are actually two different types of melatonin, believe it or not. But no, your brain will not stop doing that. But let's be clear, if you don't need it, you probably shouldn't be taking it. That's number one. Number two, in Europe, melatonin is by prescription only. So here in the United States, you can get melatonin just about anywhere. One of the reasons for that is at higher dosages, melatonin is a contraceptive. Yes, you heard me right, it's birth control. So one of the things I tell people all the time is, number one, melatonin is not appropriate for children. Anybody under the age of 18 does not need melatonin. Number one, they have plenty of melatonin on board. Number two, I can't think of anything worse than putting a contraceptive into a young female developing body for no apparent reason. Like, that just does not make sense to me. If you want to take melatonin, I recommend it for jet lag. I personally have used it for jet lag. I travel all around the world giving lectures, and it's been very, very helpful. The appropriate dose of melatonin, this is going to blow you away, is between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams. That's it. I've seen melatonin in 3 milligram, 5 milligram, 10 milligram, 20 milligrams, okay? When you overdose on melatonin, number one, you get really funky dreams and sometimes nightmares. And number two, it can actually affect your blood pressure medication if you're somebody that's on blood pressure medication, because it changes your whole circadian rhythm. So stay away from those high dosages. There is one brand that I personally use, and it's called Herbatonin, Herbaton. This is the only 100% organically created melatonin. Actually, they actually are able to get melatonin from seagrass, believe it or not, with a very interesting, very organic procedure. And it's super clean. It works really, really well. I use it for jet lag, like I said before, or if there's a melatonin deficiency. Now, when could you have a melatonin deficiency? Interestingly enough, many people above the age of 55 are starting to see melatonin decline. And so for some of my patients who are at that 50 to 55 age range, I have additionally supplementally added melatonin for them. But here is the key factor. You would take it 90 minutes before bed if it's a pill, because it takes that long for it to go down, get digested, and come back up into your brain. Or if you're using a tincture, like a liquid that you're going to put under your tongue, you can do that for about 30 minutes before bed. But it must be consistent. If there's anything you're getting from what Robbie and I are talking about today, it's all about your level of consistency there, right? Make sure that you can be as consistent as humanly possible with your melatonin, especially when you are taking it. Now, hopefully I haven't gone too crazy. Oh, by the way, there is one group of children that melatonin would be appropriate in, and these are children on the autism spectrum. There's been a significant amount of data to show, and large dosages, by the way, 3 and 5 milligrams works quite well in that population. We don't 100% know why, but that appears to be one of the only populations where I personally, as a physician, would feel comfortable asking people to attempt to try melatonin. So melatonin, moving on to hormones now. Melatonin is a hormone. And so it's a nice segue to talk about things like menopause and sort of how does that have an effect and what's going on. At the end of the day, here's what we know. Menopause absolutely positively affects your sleep. One thing that's interesting, we see the ratio of people with sleep apnea doubling in women. So right now, before menopause, for every 2 men that have sleep apnea, we see there's 1 female. When women go through menopause, that turns into a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's very interesting that we see almost a doubling of that effect. We think that has to do with the weight gain associated with menopause, in addition to the hormone imbalance that we see in association with menopause. The biggest problem with menopause from a sleep perspective is the hot flashes. The hot flashes are what seems to really have a massive effect on people. And unfortunately, there hasn't been a great solution for that as of yet. Since we're getting shy on time, I wanted to let people know that I have written about 8 blogs strictly on menopause and sleep. If you go to thesleepdoctor.com, click on the blog and type in the word menopause. You will learn more about menopause than you ever have in your life. There are some supplements that we found that can be very, very helpful. Also, there's data to show that cognitive behavioral therapy has been very, very helpful. But the big one is, just like Robbie and I have been saying all along, it's all about consistency, right? And also remembering it's that discipline and the acceptance, right? That's where you have to be with sleep. The good news is that very few people who are going through menopause have poor sleep for extended periods of time. And if they do, then we start to look at a few other things that could be going on for them. I also see there's one more question here. I thought I would jump in and answer that if that's okay. Actually, there's two. One is are the beds that cool with water when going to sleep and then warm you awake a good idea? And then there's another one. People ask me, what do I think about Matthew Walker's book, Why People Sleep? So let's talk about the cooling technology first. One thing to remember is your melatonin cycle follows your core body temperature cycle. So as your core body temperature will rise until about 10:30 at night, and then it hits a peak and begins to fall. When it falls, that's a signal to your brain to release melatonin. If your body is too hot, it can't fall, and so your body won't release melatonin. This is the reason why we recommend that people sleep in a cooler environment. There are now technologies out there that can actually help cool you down more, which is great for menopausal women. And one of them that I personally use is called the Chili technology. If you go, it's called a Chili pad or an Ooler. That's like cooler with the C taken off. I personally use that product, and I've had a great success with it. I've also given it to several of my menopausal patients, and it's worked quite well too. What this Chili pad does is it's got a pad that goes on the top of the bed, and it's got a little tube that goes through it, and it can either run warm water or cold water through it, depending upon what you set it to do. And so I found that one to be highly effective as well. And then the last part of this question was, how do I feel about Matthew Walker's book, Why People Sleep? So Dr. Walker is very interesting. He wrote a very interesting book. Unfortunately, I don't think he answered the question of why we sleep, but he did scare a tremendous number of people into thinking that everybody has to get 8 hours within a 24-hour cycle. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't agree with that position. I respect Dr. Walker and I respect his neuroscience. To be very clear, Dr. Walker is a clinical neuroscientist, and I'm pretty sure he's never seen a patient. I've seen patients for 22 years. So I feel as though my clinical expertise would be helpful in some of that genre. The neuroscience that he goes into is very good. Unfortunately, there are some inaccuracies based on newer data that have come up since the book has been written. But generally speaking, I would say that his general rubric of ideas surrounding sleep is quite good. And I think he's done a great job. I think the thing that he did better than anybody else is he really helped get people interested in sleep with the popularity of his book. And then also, of course, he was on the Joe Rogan show, which really opened up things quite a bit as well. So I'd have to say his science is pretty good, but science in a lab doesn't always dictate to science in the real world, if that makes any sense.
And Patricia, can you please drop the link in the chat for Dr. Breus, his chronotype test, because there were some people who were asking about the chronotype test and they wanted to know. So if you would please drop the link in the chat for that.
Dr. Breus, the Power of When link?
Just do the chronoquiz.com. Okay. Here, actually, you know what? I'll put it in the chat myself.
Perfect.
Cool. There we go. Chronoquiz.com.
Awesome. I believe we went through every question.
All right. And
yes.
we even have a few minutes to spare.
Yes. I would like to drop the link actually for the challenge registration. So if you do not yet sign up, please do. I will drop the link now.
And that's
also, don't forget, maybe get an accountability partner to do it with you, because sometimes it's fun to have somebody to kind of hang out with while you're doing something like this.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's always fun with more people.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and
this link works is that when you signed up for the first date, which is the 13th, actually, I will share my screen So it's easier to follow along with me.
Can I create a little clarity for you?
Absolutely, please do.
So what Patricia's talking about specifically is, although you may have registered for the challenge, she's giving you the actual calendar. So you can actually get on the calendar with us to get all the reminders and everything and just be right there with us. And, you know, we will be your accountability partner with you. And so we know, like, hey, you know, that's actually a digital way to schedule and for us to be your accountability partner, because your schedule, we know that you're supposed to be there and you're supposed to show up. So let's do this together. Let's help you to become even more awesome together. And Patty, show us how they can do that.
Yes, so the link that I put in the chat is going to open this window. When you choose the 13th, which is the date that we start, you're seeing my time zone, which is Arizona. You will see a different time for you. You pick the time that you like best, then you click confirm, put your name, your phone number, so you can get notifications, and then you repeat here, schedule event. When you click schedule event, the next session is going to show up, which is in the 15th. And this is going to happen for the 17th, for the 19th, for the 20th. And the last page is the Facebook group. So when you arrive at the Facebook group, you know that you get scheduled for every session. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. So there was one more question that landed here that I thought we could answer just before we got to go. It looks like Richard had a question about earthing mats and do we find them to be effective? So what's interesting about grounding, earthing, things of that nature is EMF sensitivity. So I'm going to be very straightforward with you. I've been practicing for 22 years. I've had 3 patients who have been EMF sensitive. I didn't believe in it, to be fair, early on, but I had somebody who came to me and said, if I turn off the router and we throw the fuse box in our house for the night, I sleep like a log. And if I don't, I don't. And I just thought that was so fascinating that let's kind of get into it and start to learn a little bit more. And so there are some effective technologies. There are 3 different things that I've talked with people about from an EMF or earthing perspective or grounding perspective. Number one, if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about the electricity that's in our walls. We're talking about the router systems, all of the things that are Bluetooth and flying through the air. How is that affecting our body? More specifically, how does that affect our sleep? They make things called a grounding pad. This is a pad that you place underneath your sheet. There's like a wire that comes out and goes down outside, and you put it in the ground. And this actually grounds you, much the way with electricity, we have to ground our electricity, otherwise it goes all over the place. You can do the same thing with your body. I can't tell you which brand because I don't know which ones my patients got, but they did seem to be very effective. The second is paint. Believe it or not, there's now a paint, and you can paint your walls and turn your bedroom basically into a Faraday cage, which is a completely shielded environment. And then you don't have to have pads and things like that. And in Spain, I just found out that there is a bed that actually not only is it EMF sensitive in terms of it doesn't allow the EMF to get to you, but it actually helps repair you while you're sleeping. I can't quote you on the data on that. I just know that it's available, but I haven't read enough to say if it works or it doesn't work or things like that. So those are some of the things that are kind of out there, more on the fringe side of sleep. But to be fair, I think there are some people where it could be effective.
Awesome. So we want to thank you all for being here. And next Wednesday, we will have another elite expert full body fix online talk show. And we would love for you to be there. You'll be receiving an email from Patricia, and you'll also receive notifications in the Facebook group. So we look forward to you being at that event with us also. And you guys have really helped made our day awesome. And not only did you learn from us, but we learned from you. And you know, this is what inspires Dr. Breus and I to do the work we do, is helping amazing humans like you. And you know, you are an amazing individual. And I want you to know one thing is that, you know, where all this stuff starts in terms of sleep and your health and fitness, is love for yourself. And that's unconditional love for yourself. When you value yourself better and you have connection in your personal inner world is better, all of these things become so much better. So I really wish you a lot of love, and to remember that you're an amazing individual and you deserve to be healthy and high functioning.
I love that, Robbie. That's awesome. I couldn't say it better myself. All I can tell everybody out there is sweet dreams.